This is Southern Cross News with Joe Palmer.
Good evening, everyone. A year after a young pregnant Hobart mum was killed by a teenager driving a stolen car, the Tasmanian government has been advised not to increase the maximum penalty for negligent drivers who cause death. But the Premier says while the new report will be considered, his government will continue to look at ways to make our roads safer.
It was the crash that took the life of 24-year-old mum Sarah Payno. Now, in the wake of her death, comes a new report looking at the fairness of driving offence sentences.
The report was undertaken because of community concern about sentencing for offences relating to driving where there was death or injury, and of course the Sarah Payno case was a major consideration.
Last August, the teen behind the wheel of the stolen car was given a 5-year sentence for manslaughter. Many community members outraged the teen could be eligible for parole as early as next July. But the Sentencing Advisory Council report has determined most driving offence sentences are appropriate and there doesn't need to be any legislative changes when the maximum penalty is already 21 years.
The maximum is already very high, but we did look at the actual sentences imposed by the courts for those offences, and there is evidence that the courts have been increasing those sentences over the recent years.
The council instead says magistrates should have the option of referring serious driving matters to the Supreme Court. All sentencing comments should be publicly available and a pilot restorative justice program should be explored. The state government will now consider the report but says it remains committed to strengthening dangerous driving laws.
If you get behind the wheel of a car, it's a serious responsibility and an obligation to drive safely, and if you don't, then we'll do everything we can to ensure that the law is adequately equipped and indeed the courts also to punish offenders.
Our belief is that we should take advice from the experts, and in this instance the Sentencing Advisory Council are the experts.
Monika Dadson at Southern Cross News.
A 34-year-old man from Chigwell has pleaded not guilty to causing grievous bodily harm and assault after an incident on Monday night that left his 20-year-old fiancée, Nicole Evans, in a grave condition in a Melbourne hospital. It's alleged Mr Davies doused accelerant on Ms Evans, leaving her with burns to 50% of her body. Matthew Davey fronted Hobart's Magistrates Court today and pleaded not guilty to the charges and did not apply for bail. The defence told the court the pair were engaged to be married. The accused will front the Supreme Court in June. A Senate inquiry into the Robo debt debacle has revealed staff for a major debt collector for Centrelink are paid on a commission basis. The inquiry, hearing evidence the failed system continues to affect the state's most vulnerable people.
Today's inquiry heard of a Tasmanian who was sent a debt letter of $81,000. This debt was reduced to $7,000 after it was disputed and eventually brought down to zero.
You can just imagine how someone who may be struggling financially is going to feel when they're told they earn $81,000. Man, that's a life-crippling event.
What we know is many Tasmanians who are vulnerable have had a high level of impact, a lot of anxiety, a lot of onus has been put on individuals to prove their innocence when in fact they have not owed a debt.
Andrew Wilkie is calling on the federal government to shut down the retrieval services immediately, saying the system's fundamentally flawed.
We're disappointed with the government that they think all is well here when just my office alone has received hundreds of complaints, including many people who simply don't owe money.
But Premier Will Hodgman says this is unrealistic.
I think it's a simplistic approach. It's a very substantive system in place. It's had its failings and they need to be fixed.
One of Centrelink's main debt collecting companies, Dun & Bradstreet, had a representative from Sydney attend the hearing. He was questioned as to whether the company has the power to garner people's wages or to visit them at home.
I can be 100% categoric that does not happen.
Mr Bligh replied the company only contacts people by phone, email or letter, but never in person, and has had one complaint out of thousands. A fact concerning many was that staff members are paid on a commission basis.
There is always a risk when you engage debt collectors on a commission basis that they're going to be over-enthusiastic in their actions because ultimately they'll make a bigger profit the more debt they recover.
There will be a hearing in Launceston tomorrow. Louise Hedger, Southern Cross News.
The State Labor Party has again accused the Hodgman government of ignoring a crisis in our hospitals and misleading the public. Rebecca White met with Launceston General Hospital staff today and says they're worried about how adequate care can be provided with increasing demand.
There is not a single bed available for patients. They are completely bed blocked. There are more patients waiting in the emergency department than there are beds available in the hospital.
How on earth can they seriously complain when we are opening more beds, we're advertising for more staff and putting more health practitioners into our health system?
Health Minister Michael Ferguson adding the beds soon to be reinstated are ones Labor closed. Quarterly results from the Real Estate Institute of Tasmania have revealed an almost 30% increase in house sales on the same time last year. Launceston is leading the way, recording a massive 440 sales in the first 3 months of 2017.
It's finally starting to spread to the whole state. Originally, for the last couple of years, it's been driven out of Hobart, but we're now finding that it is starting to spread statewide.
The first quarter of this year has seen the highest number of house sales in Tasmania since 2004. Police and SES officers are continuing a land and air search for 2 missing bushwalkers in the Scotts Peak area at Lake Pedder. The father and son, aged 42 and 13, are from Hobart. They were camping at Hewan Campground and were due back yesterday afternoon from a bushwalk. Their tent, car and wet weather gear has been located. Police have significant concerns for their safety as they are ill-equipped for cold and wet conditions and have limited bushwalking experience. After a disastrous 2016-17 season, the axe has been swung at Cricket Tasmania. Sports reporter Chris Rowbottom joins us from Hobart. Chris, 2 big names have been shown the door from the organisation.
They have, Joe, as part of Mike Hussey's independent review of the organisation. General Manager of Cricket Andrew Dykes and Tigers Senior Assistant Damien Wright's roles have been made redundant. It means that both will leave Cricket Tasmania effective immediately. Dykes' role will transform into a GM of high performance position. The search for the person who fills that role to commence shortly. The coaching setup within the Tigers program looks set to change, with Wright no longer required. A new head coach replacing the also sacked Dan Marsh is expected to be announced in the coming days. These recommendations by Mike Hussey have the full backing of new CEO Nick Cummins, who's certainly making an early impact. Chairman of Selectors Michael Farrell will also step away from his role. He will remain within the organisation though and will form part of a new high performance department. There's plenty happening at Cricket Tasmania, and that's not even discussing the playing list. Of course, James Faulkner and George Bailey look to have missed out on CA contracts, so how that will affect Cricket Tasmania's salary situation remains to be seen. I'm sure we'll be hearing plenty more out of Cricket Tas in the coming days. Joe.
I imagine we will be, and quite a shake-up. Thank you very much for that, Chris. A Tasmanian young mums and bubs support group is at risk of closing if it doesn't receive more funding before next year. The Corinna Young Women's Service releasing a new report today highlighting the benefits of its early intervention program.
The program is an intensive family support program that's attached to accommodation. So we work with young parents aged 16 to 19 years of age who are homeless or at risk of homelessness.
When I found out I was pregnant, I didn't have anywhere to live. My partner and I both didn't have a house, and this program's literally given us somewhere to raise our little man, and the stability of still being able to afford clothes. It's not a lot of rent, it's just enough to get us through.
The program is funded by the Tasmanian Community Fund and the Ian Potter Foundation, but support runs out in 2018. It's estimated the program could save the state government almost $500,000 in 5 years if it continues. They're the four-legged friends that act as eyes for many Tasmanians, and today the important role guide dogs play was recognised. Clients, supporters, volunteers and dogs alike gathered at Government House in celebration of Guide Dogs Australia's 60th anniversary. In Tasmania, 6 to 8 pups were placed each year with volunteer puppy raisers until they are ready to begin their formal training. Today there are 20 working guide dogs across the state, with the first guide dog taking on the role in 1958. Now let's take a look at the day's business and finance news with thanks to Tasplan, your local super fund. The share market has closed higher for a fourth session in a row, led by the financial sector as gains on US and other foreign markets buoyed investors. The ASX 200 was up 40.2 points at the end of trade. And the Australian dollar has closed weaker against the greenback, down to 74.96 US cents and up against the New Zealand dollar, currently buying 1.08.
AFL Tasmania has picked a 46-player state squad. From it, a team will be picked to take on the NEFL later this year. There's one big omission, with a prolific Launceston goal kicker left out of contention. Tasmania will play the NEFL in Hobart on the 10th of June. Today, AFL Tasmania announcing a 46-man state squad. It contains the best of the TSL, picked off the first 4 rounds of the season, and is littered with ex-AFL talent. Lauderdale boasts 6 names despite being winless this season. The up-and-coming Tigers have had 4 players named in the squad. Devonport have 2. North Launceston and Glenorchy hold a whopping 10 representatives each. Hobart City Demons could only manage the 1 inclusion in Ryan Matthews. Coach Anthony Taylor says the criteria for selection was easy.
The simple criteria was players that are in form and playing good footy.
As always, there's some controversial omissions. Launceston forward Sonny Whiting, the most glaring. His 15 goals from 4 games, not enough to see him named, not yet at least.
There's no saying that he won't be added if he keeps playing good footy and kicking goals.
The squad will be cut down over the coming weeks. Coaches want to see good form continue, as well as a desire to play in the map.
Form's everything, and we need to ensure that when we pick the team, they want to play for Tassie for the right reasons, and that's what we'll be looking at from here going forward.
Meanwhile, the votes are in for the RACT Insurance Player of the Year in the TSL after round 4, with Jaden Charlton judged best of field for the Hobart City Demons. Brendan Taylor got the votes in Launceston's clash with Lauderdale. Tyson Hanslow from Clarence best on ground against Devonport. And Jay Bowden awarded best in the Anzac Day clash with the Tigers. To the leaderboard, and Zach Burt remains on top with 7 votes. Jay Bowden now just 1 behind on 6 votes. Jason White holds a 41-second lead after day 3 of Targa Tasmania, but a 6th outright victory isn't a foregone conclusion, with last year's winner making a move. On the road to Railton, it was 5-time champ Jason White doing as he does, extending his 17-second lead in the GT2 class to 41 seconds in his sleek Dodge Viper. On his hammer, though, is Matt Close. He's now in outright second after a solid day behind the wheel of his Porsche. John Siddon's run in his 1970 Datsun 240Z remains a talking point. He's outright leader in the classic GT class and remarkably sits in 7th overall. Peter Ulrich leads all comers in the classic handicap, 4 minutes ahead in his 1963 Jensen CV8. In the GT Sports Trophy class, it's Jeff Morton in his Lotus Exige out in front by 1.5 minutes after day 3. Day 4 action tomorrow will feature another 7 stages, the field to wind up in Strawn tomorrow night. To local basketball, and the Launceston Tornadoes are hoping to stretch their winning streak to 5 when they travel to clash with Sydney Uni on Friday night before meeting Frankston in Victoria on Saturday night. It'll be the Torns' first interstate road trip of the season. Lauren Mansfield says with success, the Torns are becoming the hunted.
As the season progresses and teams start to scout us, we need to be able to make different reads and do different things, to get the ball in the hole.
The Hobart Chargers men's and women's team travel to take on Albury Wodonga and Kilsyth. The Northwest Thunder play Mount Gambier.
Good evening. Hobart and Burnie 13 today. Launceston and Devonport recorded 14. Low Head our top 15 degrees as a cold front crossed in the early hours. Strawn had 20 mils of rain to 9 a.m, while today Flinders Island the most with 5. 14 degrees on the island as well today. Wynyard, Bushy Park, Campania and King Island 13. Strawn 12. St Helens and also Friendly Beaches 11 degrees. Now that front had all the cloud over our region as well as through Victoria and New South Wales. A broad trough has cloud over central Queensland and to the east of that as well. Widespread thunderstorms are with the tropical low to the far north. Now the cloud slowly cleared to the east today, scattered low cloud over the remainder of Tasmania. Tomorrow an area of low pressure has developed on the front over the Tasman Sea. A trough approaches our west. We have south to southwesterlies to start the day. They'll turn west to northwesterly as strong as 20 to 30 knots over the north and west, swells to 4 metres in western waters. A strong wind warning, that's on between Flinders Island and Low Rocky Point, and a frost warning for many of the state's forecast districts, plenty there. Forecast for tomorrow, partly cloudy for Hobart, 15 the high. Possible shower for Cygnet, a cold night, 2 to 14. 15 the top for New Norfolk after a 0 start. For Launceston, partly cloudy, 1 overnight, 16 the top tomorrow, 16 for Devonport. Campbelltown, a morning frost, -2, 14 the maximum. Burnie, becoming cloudy, 16 the high, 15 for Strawn with a shower increasing and 16 the top for Smithton. And for St Helens, sunny and 15 degrees, 15 also for Swansea. Early frost for Fingal, fine afternoon, 14 the top. On Friday, showers over the west, far south and Bass Strait, partly cloudy elsewhere. More showers for those areas on Saturday, contracting to the west and south during the morning. Light showers over the north and west on Sunday, partly cloudy elsewhere with light winds. Sunny in Perth, Brisbane and Alice Springs tomorrow. A shower forecast for Adelaide and Melbourne, partly cloudy and 19 in Sydney. Now a little bit of cloud around our region, 7 degrees in Hobart, clear in Launceston 10 and 7 right now in Devonport. That's the weather for April 26. A lot of things happened on this day, including the birth of Melania Trump in 1970 in Novo Mesto, Slovenia, Joe. Fancy fact for you.
Oh, there you go. Fancy you knowing that, Merv. It's fantastic. That's all from the news team for now. See you a bit later.